I think that's where people get stuck in these loops and these traps. They just keep thinking about this question again and again, and they can't escape their mind. They just get stuck in a loop. And to me, the courageously curious don't do that. They learn to recognize, I have a stupid question. You write it down, you ask someone. Boom, done. And then you hear the answer. Even if you know, even if you actually know in your subconscious what the answer to your stupid question is, right? Until you see and experience the way you respond to someone responding to your question, you don't know the answer.
This is By Joyan Season 2. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Our guest today is an engineer, inventor, author, and founder of Ask Anyway Publishing. After earning his doctorate in chemistry, he left academia for the high-pressure world of startups, where he spent more than a decade designing battery systems for electric cars, trucks, and airplanes. Alongside the technical work, he carried the personal struggle of staying silent in moments when speaking out mattered most. In his new book, Courageous Curiosity, Find Answers Where Everyone Else is Afraid to Look, shares how asking the questions we are most afraid to ask can unlock growth, connection, and resilience. So, guys, help me in welcoming the author of Courageous Curiosity, Travis Cournoyer. Travis, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for sending me the book in advance. I just love I love the topic because I'm a very curious person, as you might have guessed, because I'm a podcaster. I just like to ask questions. I like to invite people on the show and ask them a bunch of questions. So that's what I do professionally. So I really love how you are also passionate about this topic. So I would love to start with your background, because while I was doing my research, I read a bit of your story. You talk about having lived on both sides of silence. In graduate school, you were afraid to ask questions because you were afraid of looking stupid, and the shame of that silence followed you
Yeah.
for years. And it took a traumatic moment to change things for you. So can you take us back to that moment, that traumatic event in graduate school that changed how you view asking those stupid questions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to my history with stupid questions. This book barely scratches the surface. My dad, my whole life, my dad has his favorite stupid question, and I have it burned in my memory, and I love to share it with people because it's really funny. Um, so I didn't dive into that in the book, but yeah, the book kind of starts with when I was in graduate school. A very traumatic moment that I experienced where I had an advisor, to get a PhD. That's what I was studying for, chemistry PhD. And I had an advisor who allowed me to kind of pivot my research in this brand new direction. And I didn't really I had no context to understand what that meant. My dad's a mechanic. My mom works with him in the shop. He runs his own business, or he just retired, but he was a mechanic, so he never taught me what academia is like. I had no context for what graduate school should be like and what's normal and what's not. And so because of that, I sprinted into this new research project, and it didn't go the way that we thought it would. But we didn't realize that until after I had committed to present it to the national audience at the biggest meeting for chemists, probably global, the National American Chemical Society conference, on a stage in front of hundreds of chemists. And I had to present a project that in the end it didn't match the hypothesis. We didn't really understand it. And in science, you don't do that. You don't you don't present to that big of an audience if you don't have a really good grasp on it. And especially since the person before and after me presenting was like presenting work from years and years, and I had been working on this project for a few months. So I presented. It was really hard. I was really scared. I didn't really have, like I said, my parents couldn't comprehend what I was going through. So only one person, my advisor, could kind of help me through it. I finished the talk and there were no questions. But then my advisor asked the question. I'm like, doesn't this disagree with your hypothesis? Let's go to that slide, and like quite literally highlighted why what I presented kind of didn't make sense. My advisor, so I had to explain in front of all those people that actually everything I just presented, it's still really confusing and we don't understand this. And that was really, really hard because my advisor knew I didn't know how to answer that question. And they asked in front of those people. And to make matters worse, I was so stressed out, I presented really quickly. I I did a 45-minute talk in 20 minutes. So the person who was managing the schedule said, "Well, since we're ahead of schedule, we're just going to pause here and like wait for the next person." And so I had to stand there in that shame for 20 minutes in front of 200 chemists who were just staring at me, and they could see I was shaking. It took everything I had not to cry because I felt like at that point in my life, my PhD was my life. I had worked so hard for it. And I thought in that moment, my PhD is gone. You know, I can't recover from this. And so my sense of self, I felt like I was gone. And that was a really deep pit I found myself in.
Wow. So how did you eventually recover from that traumatic event?
Yeah, thank God. So, and this is what I talk about in the book. I asked a stupid question, right? I just said, what if this isn't the end of my life? Because I don't like to sugarcoat it. You know, I did contemplate just dying by my own hand. I was so depressed. I quit that research advisor. I just decided someone who's going to do that to me, I can't work for someone who's going to do that.
Yeah.
And in my head, there was nothing that could justify that I could get past it. So I quit working for that research advisor. I took a week. I didn't know how long I was going to take off. I just stopped going to school for a while. And a week later, I said, what if this isn't the end? What if I can still do this? And I got a new research advisor. I finished my PhD, and then I blazed a super successful career as an engineer, working at electric vehicles, working on airplanes. I'm working at Lucid Motors now. And I'm incredibly happy that I made it through that moment. And I credit all of it, and in the book in a lot of detailed ways, to the stupid question I asked in that moment, which is, what if this isn't the end of my life? I was so scared to ask that question. And so that's why I say it's a stupid question. Because I posit in the book that a stupid question is any honest question you're shamed for asking.
Right. Okay. So yeah, because I was about to ask that, why would you call that a stupid question? Because I think that's, I mean, of course, it depends on your own life experience, your own background, right? To me, I don't think that's stupid to ask yourself, what if this is not the end of my life? Like I said, it's an honest question. It's a question that you should be asking. It's not stupid at all. I thought stupid question would be like
Yeah.
really stupid, like just.
Yeah.
So how would you define? What exactly is a stupid question? Like, how would you define it?
Yeah. So my whole book has one purpose. There's one reason. I want to write a lot of books. I really enjoyed learning that I like to write, and I have so many more things I'm excited to say. And this first book, I needed to write it, the catharsis. I never told anyone about that moment on that stage for 10 years, literally. Never told a soul. Only my wife knew because she was my girlfriend when it happened. Even my parents didn't know. They found out by reading this book. And so I wrote the book personally for me because I needed to tell the story and like release that out into the world. But the core reason the book exists, for your listeners especially, right? It's a tool. A stupid question is a tool that we can use with intention to build a life we want. And that's what I have done with my career, with my life, with my wife, with my kids. Oh, geez. Don't get me started on the kids. A stupid question to me is useless if I try to tell you what a stupid question might be for you, Joyan. I don't know what a stupid question is for you. If I, my definition, right? Any honest question that you're shamed for asking. If it's something you honestly want to know and you are ashamed to ask it for any reason, and if you're ashamed to ask it before you ask, so in your head, you're just beating yourself up, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy enough. It could be shame you experience as you ask it. Those are the questions like in a group setting. As you're talking, you see people start rolling their eyes, shifting their seats, right? Or you could experience the shame after you ask. Maybe after you ask and you hear the answer, somebody else asks something that kind of undercuts what you said, and then you feel like, crap, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But to me, the how and how your question ripples off of everyone around you isn't the relevant part. If you want to use it as a tool, just recognizing that it was something you honestly wanted to know and saying, oh, hi, shame, hi, fear, hi, voice telling me I'm not enough. I say you should ask those questions on purpose. You should find them for you and just ask them. And so when I say I'm going to ask someone a stupid question, I'm not asking if you think it's a stupid question. I'm letting you know I'm asking you something that matters to me and I'm afraid to ask. And I say, when people say there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? Or they say, I don't think that's a stupid question. To me, what you're doing when you say that, not purposely, not on purpose, but I think what you're unintentionally saying is the courage that person needs to ask that question doesn't exist. Sometimes you need to be courageous to ask something that people around you think is stupid or silly.
Mm.
And to me, I don't care what anyone thinks. I ask everything, and I move at the speed of stupid questions. Every day, at least 10 or 20, I purposefully find and ask. And it hurts, and it's hard, and it's messy, but it's also the most valuable skill I bring to every job I've ever had and to my parenting journey for my kids.
Right. So, yes. So, can you share, maybe give us an example or a story, that asking the stupid question actually open doors to connection and resilience in work, in career, or or in your family, with your wife, with your kids? Can you give us an example? Because I want my listeners and me, to understand how can we use the stupid questions in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, of course. I think there's definitely small, stupid questions and big, stupid questions, right? So, some small examples, right, might be, why do I drive this way to work every day? You're exploring. Go look for something new, right? Have fun that day. Change it up, right? Um, it might be, why don't I have a promotion yet? Uh, it could be, I struggle with the small ones because I only ask like big ones now. So it's like it's a lot of work for me to think of the little
Right.
ones. I mean, you have to start small, but I've been doing this for so many years. Um, yeah, so I think smaller examples might be easier to find, right? You're in a classroom, you want to know something, you raise your hand. Basically, small, stupid questions are in big settings where you get a lot of applied shame, right? Where people think, you're more scared to ask because of what people around you think. The bigger, stupid questions are the ones that I think about a lot. So, am I an alcoholic?
Mm.
Might be one. Do you still love me? Or should we get divorced? Should I take this job? Can we afford a third kid? I mean, those are questions that are scary to ask, right? And in my book, I posit very simply that you haven't, quote unquote, asked your stupid question truly and honestly unless you have voiced it to another human out loud. I think that's where people get stuck in these loops and these traps. They just keep thinking about this question again and again, and they can't escape their mind. They just get stuck in a loop. And to me, the courageously curious don't do that. They learn to recognize, I have a stupid question. You write it down, you ask someone. Boom, done. And then you hear the answer. You can't, even if you actually know in your subconscious what the answer to your stupid question is, right? Until you see and experience the way you respond to someone responding to your question, you don't know the answer. Part of the person that you ask the question to, the way they respond, that's part of the answer to the question. And so in my book, I posit you get it out to the world. You find your stupid question. What's something you're afraid to ask? Start with small ones, maybe. I do have some very actionable key insights and ideas for how to kind of get started and move slowly. And in the book, I kind of progress into those bigger and bigger questions and how you sprint into them more intentionally. Hopefully, that gives you a good flavor for some stupid questions I've asked.
Yeah, I think to me personally, of course, I'm just thinking about what are the stupid questions that I'm so afraid to ask. While I'm speaking or listening to you. Yeah, and I think what scares us is when we have to ask the question, like we have to ask someone the question. I think it's less scary when we have to ask ourselves the question. Of course, it can be scary,
Sure.
but because you are just like you are asking yourself, you already know you can give yourself any answer you want, right? But when you're asking
Mm-hmm.
another person, then of course you will not know, like you said, until you hear the answer. You can play all the scenarios, you can have all the what if, but still until you hear the actual answer, you will not know the truth. So would you say that the small questions are the questions that we ask ourselves, or we are too afraid to ask ourselves, and the bigger ones are the one that we ask someone else? Is that one of the differentiations?
No, I think the difference between big and small is so personal for each person. It's I think in the book I said it's the ghosts of your past. They kind of determine what's big and what's small. I think it was in an earlier version of the book that didn't make the final cut, but it is possible that somebody asking you, "Hey, what's the weather like outside?" That could be a stupid question if they have been alone inside in the bed crying all day, right? After like a breakup or a really horrible thing, and they text like, "Hey, what's it like?" They might be asking because they need to know if there's sunshine so they can just feel good. And so like even in that moment, what's the weather outside? We all sprint to say, "Nah, that's not a stupid question, right? That's what's the weather? That's simple." Well, it is until it isn't. And the reality is we don't know what's in other people's heads. Just like other people don't know what's in ours. And I think what happened was throughout the centuries of us talking to each other, we have been accidentally using stupid questions as a weapon, right? To like shame others and hurt others. And maybe that wasn't so bad if you think about it. Like, look at what society was back in the day and what it is now. In a lot of ways, in almost all the ways, it's better for the vast majority of people living today than it was back then. So maybe we needed some shame to like tame certain behaviors and individuals. So I think now, though, you convert the stupid question from the shame tool that it was to hurt others
Mm,
into the self-empowerment tool that we use to help ourselves instead. Because
yeah.
asking a stupid question doesn't make you stupid. It makes you brave. Especially with parenting. And I can't wait to write a book about the implications of this on parenting because we tell our children to be brave and do things that are scary. Brush your teeth, they cry. Be brave, it's not scary, you're just brushing your teeth. Well, as a parent, you can show them what it's like to be brave, to ask questions of those around you that you're scared to ask. And then you can share that moment with your kid. I really love stupid questions. I think they have a lot more value to each of us than we give them credit for today.
When we were a kid, we asked all the stupid questions in the world, you know. I don't have kids personally, but I have nephew and nieces, you know. And I'm in a very close relationship with them. So, you know, they
Yeah.
always ask me all the questions like, why is that? You know, why is this? You know, I was like, yeah. And, you know, it's just the nature of, you know, being a kid, right? And
Yeah.
I think about when I was a kid, I also asked all the questions, but why now when we grew up, you know, we stop asking all the questions, you know, we stop being curious and we just stay in silence, you know. So why do you think so many of us lose the curiosity we had as children, you know, and what does it take to recover it? Because I know many people are not as curious as they were, you know, as children.
Yeah. I think I think it comes down to confusion. Simple confusion as you age. So I've been studying this my whole life. Stupid question, shame. Not like Brene Brown. I didn't devote my career to it, but I have a scientist's mind, an unending curiosity. And like I said, ever since I was a kid, my dad has his stupid question he loves to ask, right? Which I'd be remiss if I didn't say it, right? My dad's stupid question is, why don't they have a spray that you spray in your underpants that makes farts smell good? That's my dad. That's my dad's favorite stupid question. And literally my whole life, I have known that that's a stupid question. So I've picked up stupid questions, how they exist in the world, and I've studied them under a microscope my whole life. And I think the answer to your question, as we get older, why do we stop, asking our stupid questions, is one simple point of confusion. So in well, there's two main sources of the confusion. The first is kindergarten, or like when you're a child and you start going to school. Your teacher might say, there's no such thing as a stupid question. You can ask anything in this room. And in that moment, I think that teacher is correct. But they don't finish the sentence. They say, there are no stupid questions in this room because I will make sure nobody is going to shame anyone else. Kindergarten teachers and teachers of children at that age work incredibly hard to help these human beings who have never been in big groups of human beings before learn how to work together. And so they want that process to be constructive. And shame being thrown around by children who don't know how to manage their emotions is just not useful. It's not constructive. And so it makes a lot of sense that the teacher serves as a buffer. Not only do they teach, but they like protect shame being thrown around. I think that's the first source of confusion. They didn't finish the sentence. There's no stupid questions because I make sure there aren't stupid questions here. So people just miss that trailing edge. And then there are other people who say there's no such thing as stupid questions, and they also forget to finish the sentence. And in my book, I use the example of Carl Sagan. Now, many famous people have said there's no such thing as a stupid question. Carl Sagan's just the only one who put it in his book. So I was able to quote him. But I think people like Carl Sagan are not saying there's no such thing as stupid or dumb questions. What he's saying is there's no such thing as stupid questions for me. For him, at the stage of life he was at, with the career he had, with the fame he had, with the power he had, with the voice he had, of course he's not afraid to ask anything.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye the Science Guy. Like, of course, stupid questions don't exist for them, or do they? It depends, right? So, if you use my definition of a stupid question, the only way they don't exist for them is if they feel no shame ever. And those people are called shameless. And like shameless people are quote unquote bad, right? Like we don't want shameless people. And so I think those 2 points of confusion, right? So in when you're very, very young children, again, I'm a scientist, right? Like I seek to understand. When you're a child, there's no stupid questions because somebody's stopping them. They're stopping the shame. And you're going to slowly grow up away from that into teachers who aren't going to care so much because they have to teach you more. They're going to sink more and more information into you. And now the children have to learn how to talk to each other. And then you get into high school and college and you start looking to these inspirational figures and they're saying, hey, there's no such thing as shame. When they say there's no dumb questions, well, you shouldn't be shamed for anything. The courage needed to ask doesn't exist. No, just ask everything, but don't be shameless. And so I think those two things are at the center of why we stop asking the things we're afraid to ask, which is why I wanted to write the book, to teach people it's a tool, so that when someone, there's a reason I start the book the way I do. I honestly believe, and this is, I'm what is it, scientist taking my own serum, but I honestly believe the most beautiful question, the most beautiful thing in the world is someone raising their hand and saying, can I ask a stupid question? If they truly know what that means, with the definition, like, I recognize I'm afraid to ask this. I recognize I'm not comfortable, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's the most beautiful thing in the universe.
Huh. Interesting, because I was just about to ask you, because some people might see it differently. Like you are saying, someone raise their hand and ask, "Can I ask a stupid question?" Like by saying that before you ask the questions, does it take away the shame or the fear of asking a stupid question? But because I just thinking in my head, sometimes people want to ask me a question they are afraid to ask, or they think it's too stupid to ask. They will just say, I know this is a stupid question, but can you tell me blah blah blah? And I'm like, you can just ask me the question without saying this is a stupid question, because that tells me that says that you are not comfortable, or you think it is a shame to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it's not. Do you think it's actually more powerful, or actually it takes away the purpose of asking a stupid question by adding a I know this stupid, I cannot ask a stupid question,
Mm-hmm.
before we ask the question. Do you get what I mean?
I do. And I'm actually kind of glad you haven't read the book because I think you'll enjoy it. Because I have a really good answer for you on that one, and it's in the book and it's coming up. If somebody asked me where they could ask lots of stupid questions, I talk about a curiosity comfort zone. So in the book, one of the strategies I recommend is to find a place or person where you don't have any stupid questions. Someone or some place that is so accepting of who you are, but they also always verbally give you a response. So like not AI chatbots, like a person has to be involved, and you don't need the "Can I ask a stupid question" anymore.
Yeah.
If you find that person, you can ask all the things, and it's like your whole world opens up. It's amazing. And you are a curiosity comfort zone. I could tell from the episodes I listened to that, like, yeah, you're one of those people who doesn't shame
Yeah.
anything that comes across your desk. That's rare in my experience.
Hmm.
It's rare to find that in other people, or it at least feels that way. I'm hopeful that I can. My measure and my worth will be my worth will be measured when I die by the number of stupid questions I've pulled out of people's throats. That's what I always say, right? So, uh, hopefully, as I succeed in crafting that world that I want to craft, where more stupid questions are asked and people move at the speed of stupid questions like me, we'll get data that actually shows that people like you and me are actually quite normal and common, and maybe people just needed to learn how to find us. Because I, like you, everywhere I go, people very quickly know I'm the one who, I'll never shame you for asking anything. I'll always like reinforce, and I'm excited, and I love to learn, and I love to teach, and I love to provide clarity. And I listened to your first episode right away, the podcast. It's always the first one. I'm like, let's see.
Oh my god.
because I was like, I always want to. I might start a podcast, right? And so I was like, how did she start? But also, was it a stupid question for her? And I was like, I want to listen to the voice, and like, is she scared? Is she not? I was just fast. That's I always do that. It's not just you. But yes, I think in your case, I'm glad you picked up on it. Yes, there are people for whom should, if for your listeners, if they find someone who's so accepting of them that they don't need to say, "Can I ask a stupid question?" anymore, they should hold on to that and they should ask as much as they can without burning that person out as possible.
Yeah.
I also have some cautionary tales in the book that after a while, that can insulate you in a bad way, right? Because then what if that person's not around for a week and you have to keep asking? So you still have to keep going, but it's a great place to start. So maybe your listeners, they've been listening to you. Maybe they can go start talking to some people, right? And start branching out. That's where I point to next. But yes, you don't always need to ask it. But I do say, I have a beef with a phrase, right? I really don't like when people say you should be fearless ever.
Mm,
I don't think we should be without fear. Without fear, you die. Right? It's
yes.
like if you can't breathe and your body doesn't know to be afraid of suffocation, you'll die. Like, to me, there's no value. I don't value fearlessness at all. I will always, always be afraid. I will always have questions I'm afraid to ask. I'm an engineer at a startup with some of the smartest engineers in the world, and I still have never taken an engineering course in my life. So there's a lot of things I still don't know about engineering. And so I still daily ask stupid questions and questions that make my throat quiver still. I just do it anyway. And that's moving at the speed of stupid questions.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is "Feel the fear and do it anyway."
Oh, I like it.
Because, right? Yeah, just like what you said, we can never have no fear. That happens when you die. So, how about in professional settings? Since you mentioned you work with a lot of experienced engineers,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like in corporate settings, for example, in a meeting, like a formal meeting, no one would ask like raise their hand and ask, can I ask a stupid question, because it's just even more embarrassing when it's a professional setting. So how would you encourage managers, leaders, or CEOs to encourage or to cultivate a culture of courageous curiosity in their teams, in their work culture, where people feel safe to ask, when they create, like, everyone is a curiosity comfort zone, as you put it,
Mm-hmm.
when they create this comfortable space for people to ask questions, explore without the fear of being judged.
I think the easiest way is a very simple accountability plan, right? So the person who sets up, this is true for every meeting, the person who sets up the meeting, any meeting, is accountable for inviting the right people. The people who show up are accountable to show up as themselves and bring their own perspective that is as much their own as possible. The reason I say that is because if, let's say, you have a meeting and there's one person who keeps raising their hand and they keep asking these questions and everyone's getting frustrated,
Yes.
it's not that person's fault. It's the meeting organizer's fault if they let it keep going,
Mm.
if it's actually detracting from the meeting and they don't say, hey, let's save that for later. And let's remind everybody the scope of what we're talking about here is blah blah. I'll come find you after the meeting. Like, you have lots of good questions. It's just this isn't the space. We have to solve this thing. That person's curiosity, their natural born curiosity, is the value that they bring to the organization. As the meeting leader, as the CEO, I was a CEO, founder CEO. I ran a company. I know what that position's like. It's a lot. The weight you're carrying is a lot, and you are still accountable to not force people to be who they're not. Especially, to get a little bit meta, but not too much, we're going into a world with artificial intelligence. As we do, workers are going to be displaced. So it's going to be even more critical that if you invite a person to a meeting instead of the AI assistant, that person knows they were brought because their perspective is valued as them, as the person. Because even AI can't bring the perspective they have. And the meeting organizer needs to be hyper clear on that, because I will die on this hill if I have to. The curious, it's not their job to be less curious in different environments. There's the obvious exception of like laws, right? Like legally you can't ask some things of people, right? Harassment, whatnot. Like of course you need to respect laws, get your training, be reasonable. But if you're really curious, if you want to know, I don't agree with the notion you should ask because others might have the same question. I actually think it's the opposite. I think you should ask because if it is something you're curious about and you were brought to that meeting, by asking you're bringing the value that was requested of you as a participant.
Yeah.
And so the only time I think someone who's in a room or in a group and they're asking and it's like out of place and like maybe you shouldn't ask is if you weren't invited and you just kind of stormed your way in. Okay, like now maybe it's your fault, you know? But even then, whoever the lead is, if it's not like lunch, right? Whoever the lead in that setting is, it should be on them to say, hey, you weren't invited, get out. Like, I'll talk to you later. You know, we're trying to do a thing here. I think that's how you keep it on point. And so it all comes down to the accountability of those two people, I think.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned, so what inspired you to write the book? Like after so many years, after that
Mm-hmm.
event in graduate school, like what finally inspires you to write a book, and what is really the one core message that you want readers to take away from it?
Well, yeah, no, I explain the day that I started to write it. I don't explain why I had considered it. So I started considering it because when I was working at Ampere, I was working on hybrid electric aircraft. Quick plug: largest hybrid electric airplane ever to fly, still flying today. Love that thing. Monarch is what we call it. One day, we did a career development and mentorship session, and we did it because I reached out to the CEO of the company and I said, "Hey, morale's down. I think everyone would love to hear
Mm.
about all the impressive members on our team and like learn from their experience. So like, can you just talk about how you built your career? You're the CEO of a company. That's cool." You know, we had a small team. There were like 30 of us, you know, and we would eat under the wing of the airplane every day. It was such a cool environment. And I was like, why is morale down? It should be up. We're doing cool stuff here. And so he was like, sure, so long as you present. I was like, I'm not impressive. What are you talking? He's like, are you kidding? I was like, fine, fine, fine. And so I did. And I when I sat down to write, like, what would I talk about? Like, what's impressive? At that moment, when I sat down to write that, it had been 5 years since my traumatic moment in graduate school. And it was the first time I said, you know what? I think I'll talk about overcoming that and like what I learned from it. And it was a small moment. I didn't really think about much about it. But uh, after I presented, which by the way, I broke down in tears. I was crying profusely, bawling in front of my coworkers. We had a really like strong moment. Everyone gave me a hug and stuff. It was really, really cool. And then afterwards, one of my coworkers, she walked up to me and said, "Hey, do you have like a podcast or
Wow.
something? I'd love to listen to more of like what you have to say." And so that was the seed that was planted. And from that day, it was like validation, right? It was someone wants to hear
Yeah.
what I have to say. I had thought about writing a book before, but I remember once I heard in a podcast a passing remark from someone. It was, yeah, because the world needs to hear what another white guy thinks. Right? Like they were talking about some kind of book that came out, and it was I can't remember who it was, but I like internalized that, right? And I was like, nothing I say is valuable. I'm a white guy. I should leave space for everybody else. Like when my coworker walked up to me and said that, I was like, you know, if someone values what I have to say, she was also the first person I sent the book when it was done. The first day it was done, I emailed it to her. I was like, "Hey, I wrote a book. You know, thanks for encouraging me all those years ago." Um, so that was like the genesis of writing the book. The stupid questions thing, like I mentioned, I've carried that for about 15 years since undergraduate when I had a teacher who used stupid questions as tools, and I was enamored. I could not believe it, and I never stopped thinking about it. And my scientist's mind kept spinning that event in my head again and again and again. And so this book was my way to kind of make sense of the final answer for how he had done what he had done.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm sure the next not a question, but the next stupid thing for you would be to launch a podcast of yours.
Yeah,
Now, is there anything that you really want to talk about? Perhaps
yeah.
I didn't ask you or didn't let you.
That is kind of the where I'm going next, right? So where I'm going next, this book is actually the first in a trilogy. So there's going to be 3 books total. So, like I said, I have a lot to say. You could say I have a PhD in stupid questions by this point, and this is just the abstract. This first book. Um, so this first book is, like I said, when I'm long gone, when I'm dead and gone, the value I brought to the world was the number of stupid questions I've released into the world. So this first book is designed to release stupid questions within those who are courageous enough to do it themselves. Right? They listen to podcasts like yours. They read books like mine and Brene Brown and Adam Grant. These people who are they really are gung ho, right? To like live life and not just let it pass them by. But that's not everybody. And I'm not going to stop until everybody asks their stupid questions. So the next book I'm writing is how do you unlock stupid questions not within yourself, but within your team or your organization or your group. And so I'm going to teach people how to group people and how to build settings that kind of pull out the stupid questions. The question you asked about, like the meeting, what do CEOs need to know? Oh, there's going to be a lot of that, a lot of that in the next book. And then the third book is very uncomfortable and probably the biggest stupid question of my life, which is what are the things humanity is afraid to ask? So I'm going to try to list out the things that all of humanity is really scared to ask. I don't know why, but like my mind always goes to like when is genocide bad? Like those kind of questions. I think a lot, almost constantly, about colonizing Mars. I look at living on Earth, right? We have a lot of buffers. We can make a lot of mistakes on Earth and still be okay. We can make really stupid mistakes. Like, look at what we're doing with our climate and still somehow come out the other side. That won't be the case on Mars or literally any other planet we go to. It will not be living in this comfortable luxury that Earth is today. And my stupid question is like, how do we today prepare for that? Can we? And that's the shame, right? Like, I know there are so many people at NASA, other places that will just like ridicule the heck out of me for even pretending to be able to answer that question today. But when you think about Mars, all of a sudden, questions like, when do we know everyone has to die when there's only 10 people on the whole planet? Now it's like, okay, well, hang on. That's not so obviously wrong. Like 10 people versus billions. How do you weigh that? My third book is going to be really hard to write and release to the world because I'm sure it's going to bring lots of shame and ridicule. But I want to find those questions that we are all collectively really scared of, list them out, and then start diving into like a general framework for how the heck we might start learning how to ask them. But it's all again in the purpose of the same goal. Just teach people how to use the stupid question as a tool for themselves, for their team, and for all of us together to build. Because we don't need to throw shame at people anymore. Like social media will make sure, right? There's the buffer. It's there. And I think now we can kind of pivot it just as a full switch on what a stupid question is and make it an empowering thing. And for now, hey, help kids maybe start asking more and we don't lose our curiosity growing up as much. But then organizations maybe can more comfortably navigate change in a growing world and so on and so on. So that's what's next for me.
Awesome. Yeah, that is really exciting. I can't wait for the next two books to be out. Before that, I'm gonna dive into your first book. So tell my people where they can also grab a copy of the book, and if they want to learn more or follow you, where should I send them?
Yeah, sure. So I am an indie published author, so I published the book myself. It was published through Ingram Spark, so that's a global distributor. So it will be available at all of your major bookstores. It's already listed, I think, on Barnes and Noble. The Amazon link is up, and I set it up for global distribution. I'm gonna be definitely doing other languages, and I'm open to hearing from people what languages they want me to prioritize based on where there's lots of interest. But my main website, so it's the publisher website, is where people can go and they can follow the newsletter to stay up to speed on updates. And that's www.askanyway.org. And so the paperback is published and done. The ebook is almost published. I think I'll be clicking submit in a few days. I have recorded half of the audiobook, and yes, I'm narrating the audiobook as well. And it will be available on November 14th is the global launch date of this year. And it will be available in every single place. It'll be on all the audiobook places. I'm not doing any I'm not doing any exclusivity deals with any distributors. The goal is to get the book everywhere that people might want to find it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again for coming and for your time and sharing so generously with me and my listener today. Now, guys, I will put the links in the show note below, so make sure you visit the show notes and order the book today. And I would love to hear what is your stupid question that you want to ask. So your homework for today is to ask the stupid question that you have been procrastinating, you have been, afraid to ask. And also, I would love to hear what you think about this episode. So share this on your IG if you are on IG or any other social media platform, and let us know what is your biggest takeaway. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and tag Find Joy Joyan _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.